Ladies and gentlemen, we are live on Atheist Edge and we are discussing moral ontology tonight with Lefty Philosophy and Shwah. And let's get into it. All right, let's get into it. Shwah is out of here. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am Kaz, the new host of Atheist Edge. I have with us Lefty Philosophy of the Lefty Philosophy channel, and Shwah, our special theist guest tonight, who's going to provide his perspective. And Lefty Philosophy, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and your channel and tell us what you're all about?
Yeah, well, everybody should know I'm Lefty Philosophy, LP for short. Basically, from the name, I follow left side of politics and philosophy. But when it comes to philosophy, my views are still very liquid. I just like to talk about philosophy and go through the steps because I do believe it's one of the most important things that we can do is philosophize.
Yep, I agree with that entirely. And Shwah, why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself and what you're all about?
I'm a Christian. I like philosophy. I'm a Unitarian, a Christian Unitarian, and a Christian Universalist. And yeah, the same. I enjoy talking about philosophy.
Okay, so a lot to even just to start off with. There's a lot there. Christian Unitarian Universalist. I don't know, Lefty. Do you want to start on that, or do you want to just go ahead
Actually,
and kick
I've
into the moral
never heard of
ontology?
a Unitarian. What is a Unitarian?
It's a Trinitarian is when you believe that there's the essence of God, and then you have it's a triune God, that Jesus is God, the Holy Spirit is God, and God the Father is God. But a Unitarian is when you believe there's only God the Father and He's God, and Jesus is the Son of God, but He's not God. And then there's different
Okay,
interpretations for the Holy Spirit.
that
So a Jehovah's
actually,
Witness is like a Unitarian, then, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, kind of, but yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, because they accept that Jesus is God, but he's or that he's a God, but he's a lesser God. It's a bit distinct, but yeah, but Unitarian usually just says that Jesus is not God; he's the Son of God.
and then like the second part of the Universalist or whatever. What is that?
There's different kinds of universalists, but basically, what I believe is that everybody's going to heaven. No, but people we everybody tries to get reconciled to God, and the best way to get reconciled to God is through Jesus. And the more you get reconciled to God, the fundamental thing of being, the most fundamental aspects, you get to learn more. You get to be more ethical, learn more truth and stuff like that. So it's beneficial towards you, but fundamentally, we all do eventually go to God. Other religions just as well. But there's purgatory on the way to God, where you burn, so you cleanse yourself as you get closer to God, because we're impure. We're not pure beings.
Kaz, you want to explain like what moral ontology we're going to be discussing then, just to set the framework?
Sure, sure. So, moral ontology. Ontology is basically what something is, its nature, how you understand it to be in and of itself. Am I explaining that adequately, Lefty?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
It's perfect.
what is exactly morality? That's the question that we're trying to discuss here. And in order to do that, we have to kind of get into, I think, epistemology a little bit, at least. What is? How do we know? Epistemology is how do we know things? So, how do we know anything about morality? Gives us a clue as to what morality actually is. And I did create some overlays just to kind of give us a little bit of a Yeah, sorry, I didn't get the chance,
Oh, that works
to,
well.
So let's see if I can just figure out. Oh man, see that sucks because I didn't get a chance to test these out. So, anyways, ontological. The moral knowledge is about moral reality. How is it that reality? How is it that reality? How is that reality constituted? Three general possibilities present themselves. A moral reality might be theological in nature, pertaining to, say, the will of God. It might be non-natural realm, that is neither theological nor natural, but a sui generis. It might be comprehensible as a part of the natural world studied by science. Each of these possibilities, however, is beset with difficulties, and no viable fourth alternative has been conceived. This is from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just thought that maybe I'd have a few of these available so that we could look at them, read what they have to say, and get the ball rolling off of that. So we have non-natural facts, we've got theological facts, and then we've got scientific ones, right?
Sure.
So obviously, you would have to be you would have to believe in objective morality. Shwah.
Shwah.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. If I could break that a little bit, I take it that I don't deny any of those. So like how would you say it? You what you have as the foundation of your morality is going to dictate what your ethical system is going to output. And so for that, if like for an example, humanism, you can use that as a morality. That's perfectly fine, but that's going to end up in like you use it can lead to specieside because all you can do is interpret things as humans or as having human traits. And if that happens, like if we meet aliens or we're trying to help like animals evolve or something like that, or bugs evolve or something, humanism just can't handle that because not everybody's going to have human traits and stuff like that. So, but I still do consider that moral. But I would say that there's something more fundamentally moral, a more fundamental virtue as a foundation.
But the foundation to you, right? Because your belief in Christian God is you have to believe that there are objective morals in the world as we see it.
Certainly, yeah.
And those objective morals come from the theistic side of things.
I mean, yeah, it's from God, yeah.
All right. See, and when it comes to talking about morality with Christians, this is one of the things is that you have a stance, a bedrock, right? If you were to ever question objective morality, then a lot of the other things about your faith would also start to fall. It's one of those axioms that you can't have both.
I if I could sort of set the stage a little bit for that, because I don't feel like that drives enough towards what God is. It's like we don't accept objective morality in and of itself. That would be paganism, or it would be idolatry. We accept God, and God is what dictates that. And so an example of that is objective truth from objective morality would be from objective truth. And so we use objective truth to get to objective morality. Yeah, so in that same sense, like truth and falsity, those sound like, oh yeah, objective truth. That sounds really objective. But in reality, that's more social construct for what actually is, for what is, ontology, etc. What is the nature of something? Truth is just how we try to conceptualize it. So in that same sense, I do want to say that the foundation of my beliefs is in God. It's fundamentally in the fundamental being. It's not fundamental in those others.
All right.
If I might interrupt real quick, Linda Pendleton had a message that she just said, as a former universal unit. I'm sorry, Shwah, tell me again what the UU stands for.
Unitarian Universalist.
Unitarian Universalist. Unitarian Universalist. I'm going to get that. Okay. As a former Unitarian Universalist, your guest's definition doesn't fit my understanding of the non-denominational secular church I attended here in Buffalo, New York. So, I don't know, what do you make of that discrepancy? Do you think that it's just an entirely different thing, or maybe?
No, she's correct, but she's talking about Unitarian Universalist as in the church Unitarian Universalist. I'm talking about Christian Universalism versus Christian Unitarianism, which come together. That is originally how Unitarian Universalism came up, but it's separated so much that it allows secularism, paganism, Hinduism, and all these other religions, which I'm not against, and they do have their same roots. There's a lot of crossover, but I'm very specifically a Christian Unitarian and a Christian Universalist.
Okay, understood. And just one more thing, Angelo Grasso says there can only be good and evil if God exists.
I don't believe evil exists. So, Provatio Boni from Augustine. I have a Neoplatonist conception.
You don't believe evil exists.
Yeah.
So there's only good that exists, and what are the things that are opposite of good?
There's no opposite. See, that's the binary thing. That's a human construct. I'm a predicational monist, so I believe there's God and everything's. I'm like a Neoplatonist. Everything emanates from God. Everything is in a degree of its relationship to God in terms of universality. So some things are very particular, and the more universal you get, the closer you get to the fundamental, which is God, who's the fundamental being.
So when bad things happen, they
don't happen. There's no such thing as.
Is it just like all a part of God's plan?
No,
and therefore it can't be bad because it's.
Yeah, it's a way you can view it as good and bad, but that's just us using social constructs to understand it. Yeah, so it's sort of like we can say, yeah, there's light and there's darkness, and they're opposites, but realistically or materialistically, darkness is just the absence of light. So but it can help.
But you believe in good, though.
I believe in God. That's it. I believe God is the being, fundamental being. But you could say it's good, orders of good, but that's fine.
So by default, it's just good.
Yeah. There's being, fundamental being, yeah.
I kind of get what you're saying, because I don't believe in concepts of good and evil either. I also think that those are things that the human experience has created, right? Like, when people say Hitler was evil, yes, Hitler was evil in the sense that the way we understand things and our value systems and stuff like that, the things he did to others is what we would consider evil. But does that evilness actually exist as a separate? No, it doesn't. I don't believe that.
Yeah. I think we have similar views on that. Yeah, I would, if I could justify a bit some of the things which some questions which may come up, like if in terms of particularity of good, if somebody's trying to go do something, they're doing it because they want to, that man can only do that which they most want to do in the best way possible given the circumstances. So in some sense, there's fulfilling some need for them, but it's a very particular need. And because it's so particular, it's not going to be universal enough for it to encompass goodness for other people. So
like when I hate using the kill babies things, but it's the most universal thing I can think of, right? So when somebody kills a baby, that is just what?
Well, that's them
just
doing something. Yeah, it's a very particular. It's a very particular good, and it's well, I wouldn't say good. It's a very particular being. It's a very particular existence and essence and stuff like that. And in some senses, you can see where everything that's really, really bad, that's really, really horrible. You can see in some instance where it's just like, yeah, but there's some particular instance where that could possibly be good. And whether us as humans, we're, we have original sin, we're ignorant, or how would you call it in philosophy? It's we don't have epistemic, not we don't have epistemic confidence or whatever. So yeah, there are going to be everything inside there. There could be some particular goodness from it, but yeah.
I've never. Okay, this is interesting. I've never thought of a theology like this, where good and evil isn't at the base of it, because basically choice is what gives you free will. And if you free will is basically the premise of almost every religion is free will. And in order for you to exercise your free will, you have choice and consequence. And basically, without a moral system, you don't have a consequence. So what is the point of the choice?
Sure. Yeah. So that is a pretty good dogma for a lot of Christianity, but you have Armenian soteriology and then you have Calvinist soteriology. And Calvinist soteriology is more like determinist. It's called predestination. You have single predestination, double predestination. I don't know
But
the
that's not
distinctions.
determinism, though. Don't mix those together. Predestination and determinism they're similar, but they start at completely different points.
Do you mean by go ahead.
Predestination presupposes that a being made that plan, right? Determinism is there's no being that does that. It just happens the way it happens. So like when you say predestination, you presuppose that there's a deity or a being that made that plan, right? But so like that concept is very different than just determinism.
Sure. Well, I don't think there's too much issue at here. I don't necessarily think determinism has to be pushed off into material conception or however it would be. For me, there's no real distinction between them. But so in that sense, there doesn't have to be this choice is the point. And for me, I'm a Calvinist in that sense, soteriologically. So I don't believe we have choice, but I do believe the higher we get closer to God, the more higher quality and the higher quantity of actions that we can make. And so we have to try and we have to reconcile everybody to the fundamental truth, fundamental being, and then we're all going to get higher, quality actions and higher quantity actions. And so that's our goal as Christians. That's 2 Corinthians 5:18 through 19.
So you don't believe in free will either?
No, not at all.
What the
fuck? I don't see the reason to.
Because that's like one of the most Christianity falls into the bucket of free will has to be an axiom for it. If you don't have free will, then there's no point in God giving you choice to live on this planet. That is such a weird thing. So why are you on the planet then? Why did God make you to be on this planet and not just put you in heaven?
I can't say that. The question why we were created and stuff. I will say that the idea is we are supposed to go towards God, and to go towards God, we burn in purgatory as we go towards Him to become pure, to get towards God and to reconcile with Him. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly how that works. That's extraordinarily metaphysical.
Yeah, that throws a lot of wrench into a lot of my understanding of Christianity. Of course, you are a very subsect of Christianity that I've never talked to. A very small subsect, because most Christians do not believe these things. Most Christians like free will. That's like the basis of individualism too. You have the opportunity, and I don't believe in free will either. I don't. Sure. And if anything, I would maybe consider myself a soft determinalist or determinist, but I don't believe in free will either. And one of the reasons why I've become an agnostic is because I don't believe in free will, because I saw how that action or the choices was so fundamental to Christian beliefs. Because what would drive, so the only thing that drives you to be a better person is to be closer to God. Why would you want to be closer to God?
Well, I could give an example inside another field, inside physics. If you want to, how would you say it? If you have classical mechanics and you have quantum mechanics and general relativity and quantum field theory, you have classical mechanics, and what it can, parse through in physics is of a lower amount. But with quantum mechanics, you can parse through more, and then with general relativity, you can parse through pretty much everything that classical mechanics can, but you can parse through more. So there's clearly, and they both obviously entail, physics. So they're both, that's, their subject. That's what they're interested in. So in this sense, you can see that the more universal that a particular physics framework is towards physics, the higher worth it is just necessarily. It's just what it is, and then in that same sense, I would say that applies towards everything, math, science, everything that happens. And the closer we get towards the most fundamental thing, that would be, that just higher quality actions, higher quantity actions. We just get more, closer to God.
I guess I also don't believe in universal truths, or if there was such a thing. I guess I'd have to explain this, is that in order for a universal truth to be there, it'd have to be true in every possible scenario, right? But we can't test that. We don't know if it's true, 100 billion light years away in another galaxy. We don't, and maybe one day we'll be able to know those things. But I just don't think that trying to talk about universal truths is something that will ever get us to anywhere where we would want to be.
I think that's very fair. I feel like that comes as an issue with the binaries of treating it like universals versus particulars. Treating it binaries, I 100% agree with you on that. But I do feel like there would be a lot of throwing the baby out with the bathwater if we just throw away this value system that we do have and which we do use in physics as well. In linguistics, we have what's called like implicated universals, and what they are is it's basically if X, then necessarily Y. So if red, then necessarily color or lights or something like that. And it's in every instance where you have red, it entails, lights or whatever. And so in that same instance, in every instance where you have classical mechanics or something like that, you have physics, which is matter and energy.
But until it doesn't.
Where's the but until it doesn't?
Right. It entails red until it doesn't. We just haven't found out a way that it doesn't entail red.
No. Red entails light necessarily.
Yeah, no, that's what
color.
and that's what I'm saying is that right now, what we know, it entails that right now. But what we don't know is what I'm more interested in, and I put my money more into that bucket of what we don't know. So when you say that it, like always, there's a universe. Of course, it works for right now, right? Until we get to a place where we're more technically advanced, or we can see more or understand more, and then it's not true anymore.
Yeah, but we define red as a certain wavelength of light, so there's no way you can ever get not light from red. I mean, we use the term red, of course, and it sounds, we use it colloquially, but in scientific or whichever terms, let me be a little specific. Scientific concept, the wavelength of light, which is red, whichever that would be, entails light. I think that's fair.
Yeah. And there, what is it? Angelo Grasso made a comment about if morality is subjective, it equals to no morality at all. And I don't believe in subjective either morality, but I do believe there are different objective moralities. So there's the objective morality in which all of humankind can agree to, right? That is something we could objectively point to and say, that is where we should go. That is good, right? Like not killing babies is probably a universal objective. But when we apply these things outside of like Earth and outside of into other areas, it's not an objective truth anymore. There is no such thing as like an objective truth that's true in every sense, in every scenario. So that's how I split my objective truth. There's absolute truth, which I guess is what you would be talking about. It's true in every realm, every way you can think of. But like objective truth is just what we as a collective believe to be true because it works until it's not true anymore. Kind of like let's say capitalism works really well right now, right? Until we figure something out, and then we're like, oh, so that's no longer true. If that were true, right?
Yeah. I agree with you. Yeah. I don't deny subjective truth, but just like you, I don't think it's the I don't feel like it has a lot of explanatory power for what does happen. In fact, the only subjective truth, I guess, I think we're all familiar with is cogito ergo sum,
Yeah.
or debito ergo sum.
So Angelo Grasso is also saying that they're saying a lot of things. I'm gonna go through them one at a time. The fact that we cannot know which ultimate reality is real does not mean it does not exist, and I would agree with that.
I think I agree with that too. I don't have really.
He goes on and says, because of that, God exists, but that doesn't follow. Like, because I can say objective reality exists in the sense of what we as humans all subjectively come to a conclusion on, and it just so happens to be that killing babies is a bad thing. That doesn't mean that God exists because we have all just come to this conclusion that killing babies is bad. That just means that for where we want to go as what we decided as a collective, that the best path to that would probably be not killing our babies.
Objective, meaning mind independent, doesn't mean physically real or ingrained in the atoms of the universe per se. It means mind independent.
Yeah.
In just that. So if we agree on something, then independent of either of our minds, we have agreed upon that. So like when we in the military, when we chose an objective to achieve, such as capturing a high value target, for instance, that is the objective, regardless of what anybody thinks or feels or has decided about that objective. That is the objective. It is mind independent. So once we reach the objective, then it is accomplished. And that is the thing about English. And English is a shit language. I think everybody realizes that, right? The words that we use, they have all these multiple meanings, and even meanings have multiple words. It's totally ass backwards. I think German is a better language, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't know German, so I can't speak of that firsthand. But I mean, the word objective means something, several different things, and the way that we're using it here for morality is that we can all choose objectives that we can all reach that suit us all equally, or maybe a better term than equally. I can't think of it right now, but go ahead.
Yeah, that was a good. I didn't think of the military thing, and I used to be in the military. I just never thought
We're
of
all
that.
military. Yeah, I was in the Marines. Yeah.
Oh, I was in
We're
the
all
Army.
former military. Nice, yeah. Were you in military too, Atheist?
Yeah, I was in the Army.
Nice.
Let's say
that's cool. And Texas.
Angelo is very talkative. Let's address everything else that they said. If objective morality exists, God exists, and see that, like, in the sense that we're using it here for objective morality, has nothing to do with God either, right? But also, I think that morality is a emergent phenomena of the dynamics between agents, like the way that friction is an emergent phenomena of the dynamics between atoms, similar to that. And so that exists independent of any particular person, just like friction exists independent of any particular atom. And in that way, you don't require any God either.
I don't buy into emergentism. I've got to say, I'm not an emergentist. I'm an emanationist. So I've never seen. I know there's a epistemological or weak emergentism, which is argued. I don't. I guess I don't deny that. But I haven't really come up with an argument against that. But ontological emergentism or strong emergentism, there's no. I've never seen one argument for that. So.
Well, what do you mean? You are an emergent property. You are an emergent property. Like your consciousness is an emergent property of the neurons in your brain. Like no individual neuron in your brain has consciousness, and not even like a certain clunk of them necessarily, but like all of them together functioning in harmony, or whatever term you want to use. The electrical firing, the chemical processes, all of that together emerges your consciousness. You are an emergent property. How can you not believe in it?
Oh, well, I don't believe that consciousness comes from neurons. So of course it would seem.
You forget there's a soul in their world.
Yeah, I mean, I
the soul is where the consciousness comes from.
Well, yeah, I could justify that. We've got molds, slime molds. You can look up, Google it, slime molds. They have memories and stuff like that. And then they've got no neurons. They have nothing like that. And then you also have like plants and stuff like that. And you have animals. And once you point out, you're like, oh, it's a neuron. Oh, it's a this. Oh, it's a that. And it's like you can't find one thing which is like equivalent, in which case you can say like, oh, it's emergent from that. And we just have, that version. So yeah, I don't think that. I do feel like if people say it's emergent from that, that would be like a weak emergentism, or it's like epistemological emergentism. It follows. There's some validity towards it, but it's not ontologically what's happening.
There's something interesting, because you speak about language, right? And this is one of my contentions when it comes with the belief about God, right? Everything that you know about God, all of it comes from language, right? Language that has been passed down through generations and generations, right? This language holds baggage on it. It has concepts and ideas and cultural norms and all this stuff, right? Where does the concept of God even come from? If you were to be marooned on an island with no memory of language, what would ever bring you to the realization that there is something that created you?
Sure. Yeah. Do you have a naturalist theory of religion, where you believe that religion is basically humans trying to understand nature and stuff? Is that how you conceptualize religion?
I don't really have a one concept about religion. I don't think about it enough to really care about how it came to be. Like when people, it's similar to the question of like, how did humans form civilizations? Honestly, I don't care how, because it's so far back in the day, nobody can prove that. So what's the point of talking about it? So how religions came to be, I can't. I don't, even if you were to answer it, I can't prove it or not, so it'd be useless.
Sure, but we can find the validity of it and then see how the framework works and where it doesn't work. And this would sort of tie into your question about, you're marooned out. How do you know God exists? How are you going to come upon that? Well, a good question
not even see. Knowing that God exists already presupposes that you know what the concept of the word God is. I'm talking about before that. Before you, like any concept, you're a blank slate. Like, where does that concept come from?
Sure. Yeah.
Like, where would you look in nature to be like, okay, so that monkey over there is doing weird things. So that must mean there's somebody like me up there or somewhere that created me. Like the concept of us being created also ties into that. Like, because our language has carried on through so far, we just don't even think about these simple words, such as like how weighted the term God is.
Sure. So I kind of want. I was going to go a bit about it, but and just tackle linguistics at the same time. I don't believe semantics is what's fundamentally informative about our ideas, and I don't think I don't remember what that theory is, but it's the idea that language is how we understand reality. I don't remember what that's called, but it's been disproven.
But it does inform our reality, though.
It can inform it, certainly, but we shouldn't limit it at language and stuff like that. So the question would be, does God exist outside of language? And so talking about
no, that wouldn't even be the question, because you're still using the concept of God, right? How do you get to the concept of God?
Okay, so how do you get to the concept of God outside of a word or anything like that? In fact, what if it's not called God? What if it's called, orange or something like that? Can we test if orange is any different from God without using language itself? And sure, yeah, certainly. I was going to go into like a theory of religion for that, but you brought up a justification or some way to justify. And you said by looking at nature, how does you do that? And so I was going to ask you, how do you think people understand math, or how do you think they grasp math if they just look at nature? Okay, well,
math is
go
also a made-up language too. Math is not a universal truth. I don't believe math is. It's just a made-up language. There may be something much better than math that we just haven't figured out yet, which is maybe why we don't understand how to go to Mars. Math works for right now.
I feel like that's throwing so much out of it. Like we obviously get like computers and stuff like that, which we're using because we advanced math, because we advanced mathematical logic. Okay, so we'd have to throw away too much to just say like, oh, there's nothing, there's no difference between math. Obviously, there's something that's happening, even if it's not the perfect conception of it, or even if we haven't ideally come upon what math is. We can say that we are clearly progressing in some sense. Some math systems just let us do more things, just the same as the physics. Some classical mechanics, how it can conceptualize nukes, is nowhere how quantum mechanics can, and that's there's just a natural value inside there. So that being said, I did want to go into Frege real quick. Frege said basically that, if you look at like atoms, you get two hydrogen atoms, and they can morph to become one helium atom. What would how would you say that's happening? Like, what is that specifically that's happening? And you can't say it's from anything material, because there's other things inside physics, or even inside chemistry, in which case we see some of these things happening. What would you consider that?
What?
They can't be material.
I have no idea. I'm not a chemist.
That's fine.
and also, if you were to say 1 and 2, that presupposes that that 1 is one individual object, because technically 1 doesn't exist either. Doesn't exist in the natural world. When you look at a tree, a single tree is not 1. We've formulated that, right? I can't remember who taught. It's a philosopher who talks about that, but like 1 + 1 = 2 is it works for us, but it doesn't exist in nature, because when you have one apple and another apple next to it, 2 doesn't exist. They're just one apple and one apple. It's a apple.
But helium does have different properties than hydrogen. Yeah, and hydrogen is one electron, one proton, and one neutron. And when they come together, they get I believe it's 2 neutrons. Well, I think it's just doubled for helium. So in any case, and then they have different properties, and it's not just different, like what they can attach to, like they have different physical properties based on this mathematical property. And this mathematical property isn't inherent in the chemical property, or it's not inherent in any material property that we have. So there clearly seems to be something that is there, which isn't, we can't talk about it, or we can't conceptualize it fundamentally in material or chemical aspects. And it can't be social construct because
I get what you're saying. So if the math, but then you wouldn't, if math wasn't a concept, like what I'm trying to explain, the concept of God, right? If you were marooned on an island, you lost all memory of everything, and even language itself, that you couldn't talk to your own consciousness because there's nothing, you don't, like, we can't even think like that, because even since birth, words were introduced to us that carry meaning subconsciously throughout the rest of our lives, right? It's such a hard concept to think about, but that's where I'm stuck at, is I don't even, the concept of God doesn't even make sense to me. Not just the concept of your God or any God, or just all ideas of God. We might have lost Shwah.
Oh no.
No, I should be here. Sorry. I'm sorry. I was trying to look for it. Yeah, no, I do agree with you, but I was I'd have to go through that thing. I was gonna try and look up what it's called. It's pretty famous. I forgot what it's called though. But language doesn't inform. It doesn't determine our understanding and meaning. So the way you keep saying it is like that language determines it and stuff like that. But just similarly, Allah, Christians call, and even Jews call, God, their God, Allah, Yahweh, they call him Allah. And it doesn't matter which words you choose, because it's not fundamentally in the word itself. It's, an abstract virtue. It's an abstract concept, like love. It doesn't matter which language you use, truth, charity, et cetera, et cetera. You can have all these different languages, and they all still strive towards these things. And some of these things have more explanatory power than others. You've had, calculus get, invented twice, by Leibniz and by Newton. And so they ascribe towards these virtues and values. And, of course, they had some differences towards them in notation and some other concepts. But they still borrowed from this abstract virtue. So in that same sense, that's something I would be using, or that's an argument I would be using. It'd be similar to it'd be an ontological argument, a bit more in like Gödel's conception of it. But yeah, so yeah, I suppose just that, yeah.
And then when you get to the concept of God, right? The concept of God only has attributes that humans can think of. It doesn't have anything that we can't think of. Meaning that our reality and the way we see things has shaped and created this concept. Because the any God anywhere doesn't have things that are unthinkable. It doesn't have properties that we can't think of already, right? They can do things we can't, like they can live on for eternity, or they're, they don't have physical bodies. But they never have things that are unthinkable and it's really hard to explain that, because of course the God wouldn't have things that we wouldn't be cognizant of or whatever, because we wouldn't know about it. But it just so happens that like most of these concepts of gods all have human attributes that we would have had first. And then you get around it by saying that God was created in our image, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. But still, when we talk about language, it just so happens that everything in you talk about God just so happens to revolve around the human experience.
I feel like that fundamentally how God is how God is. Like conceptually, like even in Christianity, we don't understand God fully. I mean, that's that's the book of Job. But
But we don't
even more,
understand ourselves fully either. Can't you see like that similar path that the more we understand about us as human species, the more we understand about God?
no, I don't view that. I feel like that can help, but that's a correlative. Epistemology, like the knowledge of a thing, entails the thing itself. To have knowledge of it implies it. And so, in that sense, it doesn't. We don't need to know everything about ourselves. In fact, us knowing everything about ourselves is not going to grant us automatically physics or math or anything like that. All it grants is, us, which again, like, is a very limited amount of knowledge that we do have, that we can definitely say from us. So yeah, I wouldn't say that grants that. I would
So
say, like,
knowledge of the thing itself shows that the thing exists. So I mean, that thing, I've heard that so many times, and to me that sounds like Superman is real. How does that not mean Superman is real? Because I know that Kal-El comes from Krypton. I know that his mom is Lara. I know that his dad is Jor-El. I know that his dog is Crypto. I know that his wife is Lois Lane. I know he's got a son named Connor. I know all these facts about this dude that never existed. So if I have all this knowledge, that must mean that he's real, right? Because that's what you just said.
No. It's knowledge of an object, and so the object doesn't have to be material. It doesn't have to be anything, but it does have to be. There has to be some reference to it. So if I say, like, "Oh, the King of United States of America died today," like, you need some reference. I need some reference for that to even, coherent. Whether it's a video game, a name of a celebrity, a book or something like that. We need some reference for that, but it can be a social construct, but it does need that reference. So to say I have knowledge that the King of the United States died, it entails that object exists as a social construct, at least.
So just let's bring it back on topic real quick. All right, so objective morality, right? You don't believe in that.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't believe. I don't accept objective. Well, I said I believe in God fundamentally, and so if
So like
objective
morality
reality is
actually doesn't matter to you at all then.
no, morality does matter to me a lot, but it barely, it's not God himself. So, like, I use a moral ontological argument where instead of positive properties, I just use morality. And the conclusion ends up coming out to be is that fundamentally, if it doesn't say that God exists, it says if God exists, he is the best foundation for morals, because he's the most universal being.
Where did you get the foundation of these morals from?
From God. What do you mean?
Like, did God tell you these things? Did you read them? Did you grandma tell you that's what he said? Or where did you?
No, that's testimony, but that's testimony epistemology. But you can't. There's ontological arguments. They're more Platonic. They try to do the most universal. So they try and get what's more universal is going to be what's more universal, rather than what's more. You could say it's what's more true, but it's just saying what's more universal. And so eventually, yeah, go ahead.
So that's basically God is truth, and whatever leads towards truth is God.
You can say that, sure.
So, but
not whatever leads towards truth is God, but whatever leads towards truth is godly, I suppose. But I'm not sure what point you're driving at.
Because I just don't see the point in you believing in morality then. Or even
I don't see where that follows. I think that's what threw me off. I don't see what that morality is really important.
Why? If bad doesn't, if evil doesn't exist, right? And everything just goes towards God, and you're going to end up in purgatory, and you're probably going to end up in heaven. Like, what is still the point of morality to you?
Yeah, it's the most prudent action to take. It's the best action to take. It's the one that helps people out.
You don't believe in free choice, so you don't have an action to take. You just do it.
Well, we have, I believe we have higher quality choices based on where we're at. Like the decisions that, a child can make is, generally going to be very different from the decisions an adult can make. And that's in the same situations controlling. You're just going to have a more,
But
just a
children are
broader
always
conception.
accepted. Children are always accepted into the kingdom of heaven.
I'm just
Well,
trying to say that people can
Well, does he
have
have?
different
Do you,
choices
do you have
still.
damnation, Shwah? Do you believe in
Do
damnation?
like going to hell?
Yeah. Does anybody
Is that
go to
what you
hell in
mean?
your theology?
No, I'm a
they just
universalist.
sit in purgatory, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, but I don't believe purgatory is like hell. I believe purgatory is just like we burn as we get closer to God. When we die, our spirits go to heaven, and then based on how close to God, our relationship with God, we don't have to be in purgatory all that long. So,
Okay.
but
So nobody
So
goes.
what?
Nobody goes to hell.
What's the point of
God.
morality?
well, it's so you can do better things. Like it's for anything. You make prudent choices. Like, okay, well, what do you want to do? You've got to eat. Well, humanism just as well. Like, just the example I gave. For humanism, you want to decide how do you want to deal with animals. Oh, there's aliens over here. How do we deal with them? Okay, well, you can't. With humanism, you can only deal with them to such a strong, to such a level that it might end up leading to us getting into a war with, aliens. So you want to have a stronger foundation, and then that's the stronger and stronger foundation that you get. That's going to lead you towards better and better decisions. So that's the benefit of morality, and we just
But
get better things.
but what if there's
But you
no?
did just say that there are no free will, didn't you? There is no
Yeah,
free will.
I don't believe in free will. Yeah, I don't believe choice is fundamentally from
So
us.
then
No,
there's no point in morality because you're
no, there
just
is.
gonna only do the things that you're gonna do.
No, there's still point in morality. I guess you could call it like compatibilism if you want to, but we, I will say, the higher choices that we're only going to do what we're going to do. But however, morality does dictate and influence us. Let's say if you built a society's laws around individualism, you're going to have that's going to influence how people under that act. And so, if you have a better, foundation for morality, then that's going to influence how everybody under that acts, and that you can have people be determined and stuff like that, and they're still going to be,
But
better
why
off
does that
with one or
matter?
the other.
Why
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 would good
does it
things happening
matter?
matter?
Yeah, why does it matter?
I, why does good things happening matter? I
In
mean,
your concept, right? Because if everybody's just basically either going to go to heaven or sit in purgatory and still get closer to God, what is the point of good things happening?
well, I guess I'll say this: man can only do that which he most wants to do in the best way possible given the circumstances. So we can only aim towards wanting to do good. So whatever in a large point, we could skip by, you know, you know, why would anybody want to do good? But that's all we can do. So
Right. So the morality doesn't matter. And it shouldn't matter in your point of view. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it as in a bad way, right?
you still have choice. If you base your thing on, how would you say this? What a kid's conception of morality is, yeah, it's good. It's going to bring them to wherever it is, but it's not going to be the most good. And so if you teach them something that's a little bit better good,
What
then
is
they're
their
going to,
consequence?
the consequence of having a bad moral
Yeah.
compass,
Yeah.
law, murder,
So
crimes,
you just die,
hurting
but you're still
themselves.
gonna okay, but you're still gonna get into heaven.
Well, yeah, but it's still purgatory for there. But
So
how
what?
would you say? Well, do you want to have a good life? Do you want to have quality things? Or do you want to just, let me put it this way. If you have no morality or very low morality, we saw in Russia, they had like the Fox experiments, where they had ones that were friendly with humans and ones which weren't. Now, this just correlated to what was happening, but eventually, the ones who did not work with humans all that well whatsoever, after generations and generations, they stopped taking care of their kids, and they just die. It has consequences, whichever
Why does
morality
that
you choose.
matter, though? You're just going to make it to heaven anyways.
Don't forget.
I'm not entirely sure how anybody would choose to do
I'm not
that.
saying anybody would choose, right? I'm just saying it doesn't matter. Because
I
you're
don't.
going to end up going to heaven anyways. And I also have to ask, like, why would I want to go to heaven? What's in heaven in your belief? What's in heaven that would make me want to be there anyways, other than being closer to God? Is that just it? Just being one with God is what you're striving for?
Yeah, well, I think there's something fundamental here that that really answers both of those questions. I don't feel like anybody can try to do anything except something that's good. So I don't feel like what you're saying is like it feels like you're trying to separate it from it. And I'm thinking like your decisions and all that stuff, it's all tied to there. You can only do at least what's good for you. Even if you're trying to relax, you're trying to relax in the best way you can. If you're trying to kill yourself, you're trying to, kill yourself. You're done with that stuff, whatever you're doing, you're trying to
This
do it
is
in
the
the best way
problem with
possible.
compatibilism, though, is that you can't have both. Like, it's so hard that you can't. There's no point in having morality when, in your view. Well, honestly, if morality is just something to talk about, then, but it's not going to change anything, because the end goal, like the long game, right? If we're all individuals trying to get closer to God, the end game is I'm still going to get there no matter what.
I just don't feel like it's like that. It's like
And
it
that may
entails.
not be a good thing, right? But that's also your personal feelings that are influencing that, right? I don't like,
No,
of
I feel
course we
like
don't want to be bad to other people, or we don't want to do bad things to other people. But if your only goal is to make it to heaven and there's no consequence for being a bad actor, what's the point of having morality?
Again, I feel like it's separated. But if you want to go to heaven, then there's reasons that you want to go to heaven, like goodness. So there's all this stuff that's entailed inside there. So you're not gonna, like Christians, like the whole Christian conception is like God died for us and saved us on our sins, and we walk, we emulate Christ, and we try to do that so we can reconcile people towards God. Well, why would we want to do that if we're saved? Like, why would we want to do that? Well, because that's entailed inside it. All that's entailed inside it. So all
But
those
they're also
decisions,
saved, are they not?
well, this is my point. It's not separate. It's not separate. It's all, if you want to go to heaven, if you want to do. For me, I'm going a bit broader. I'm not saying if you're a Christian, necessarily you've got this fundamental drive, and that's not to say that people can't be influenced by other things like politics and stuff like that, and say do some terrible things. But if you, as a Christian in itself, what is entailed in that is towards emulating Christ and trying to save people and stuff like that. But I'm broadening this out even more. So I'm saying everybody wants to do good. Everybody wants to do all this stuff. And so we're naturally always trying to do this. So there's no thing where it's just like, well, I don't want to, I'm choosing to go to heaven today, and everybody can go die,
Well, I mean, but you don't have
then you
that
just
choice,
sit.
though, right? Because you don't believe in free will, so you wouldn't have the choice to go to hell even if you wanted to.
I'm
right?
being colloquial and trying.
No. Yeah. And I'm just trying to understand your mode of thought. That's it. I'm not trying to extend this to broader things. I just want to understand where you're coming from, because like honestly, I don't understand why you even care about morality from your point of view, because it may make other people's lives better, and it may make yours lives better for the small, minute time that you would be here on earth. But in the broader spectrum of things, living in eternity with God is eternity. So, like, help me bridge that gap.
Yeah, I tried to put your thought puzzle inside action, so where it's like separate. I'm trying to say there is no way it's separate. There is no way you can say, okay, well, I'm going to heaven and not want to do good things. Like, the message of heaven is fundamental. It's big. It's like saying, oh, I want to learn math, or I want to learn algebra, and then saying, okay, well, I don't want to learn math. It's entailed inside there that you want to do something more fundamental to it. It's just how it happens.
Yeah, but like the whole idea of morality is that there's a bad choice and a good choice. And if you don't have a bad choice or you don't have the option to you do the bad choice, why even care about morality?
You have the
Because if
option
it's
to.
already good.
It's an order. It's like I said, I'm not a dualist. I believe I'm a predicational monist. So I believe that there's better ways to reconcile people towards God and reconcile people towards a universal being.
But everybody is already going to God, right? So what is the point of your work then to proselytize or whatever?
To reconcile people towards God, it just helps everything. It's the fundamental truth. I mean, if you know, like, what's it called? If you know some fundamental math, we'll just call it, let's say calculus. If you know calculus and everybody's walking around trying to do arithmetic, and you're just like, okay, well, yeah, if you know calculus, whatever you do is just inside math is going to specifically if it's calculus or whatever, you're going to you're just going to do that. I'm not sure how you're separating these two.
Oh, okay, so let's do a thought experiment. Or no, let's try to put this in. All right, so let's just say that you have a choice between A or B. Let's just say one is saving your grandma and the other one is going to McDonald's. You have a higher order need to save your grandmother, probably, right? Than feeding yourself.
You would, in most cases, yeah.
All right.
There may be some case.
The vast majority of the time, everybody is going to save their grandma.
Yeah, but the point, that's not informative of what it is. Like you're just saying, like, oh, here's A and B. Like that's a social construct. Yeah, it's a puzzle experiment. But that doesn't say anything about what's happening. Like, oh, you want to save your grandma or do you want to go eat? Okay, well, there's a broader picture. You can't just isolate it. That's why I'm not really big on trolley.
What would be the reason why you would if you went to go eat, you would just lose your grandma, you would still get to heaven?
Yeah, well, if you I don't know how you're separating this. I feel like I've explained it well enough. If you there can be situations in which case where you want to have to go to McDonald's or something like that. And an example would be like if an alien came down and was like, we're going to kill your grandma 3 times over and your whole family too, if you don't go to the whatever, and you're going to make a decision based on what you think is most universally good towards yours. I don't see how you're separating this. This is just naturally what you're doing.
But why would you want to do that?
To be honest, it's just what you want to do. I have no idea how to explain this anymore.
See, and that's where
what you want to do.
My contention is that some people don't want to do that.
Some people, well, they would have a reason for it though.
But the reason doesn't matter.
It would, because it would be based on how self-actualized, what's the most universally self-actualizing for them. That's just what it is.
If I just don't like my grandma. So if I don't like my grandma, but if I don't like my grandma and I don't save her, that's not a bad choice. And I'm still going to get to heaven.
It's a very particularly choice. If you're, let's be a little bit more thought experimenting. If you're on drugs or something like that and you're not conceptualizing what's happening, you may not make the decision to save your grandma because you have no idea that that's what's happening. And you may go to McDonald's or whatever like that because you think you're saving your grandma or something like that. And that's
the objective moral being who's given the objective morality isn't going to punish me for not choosing the right thing. Why?
Well, you do have to burn in purgatory for you to get closer towards him.
I mean, for how long? I mean, I'm going to be living for eternity, right? So I mean, what's a couple 100 years sitting in purgatory so I could be living in eternity with God?
I don't know how to explain it. I really don't. It feels like you're using, like, you're separating things in really odd situations. Like, we can only do one thing, which is try and self-actualize in the most universal way that's possible to us in our conceptions. And as we grow and have more fundamental understandings of things, that's we're going to have, more higher quality self-actualization choices. There's no way you can separate that. There's simply no way you can separate
There
you
may
doing good
not
and
be,
all that
but
stuff.
in the broader sense, then there's no reason for morality in your worldview. There's just no, I don't see a reason.
If you want to self-actualize more, you need fundamental morals.
But self-actualizing more isn't, it's just going to get me closer to God faster. Well, what if I just don't care about how fast I get there because I know I'm going to get there?
How would you say it? Again, you can't separate it. I don't know how to explain it. You can't separate it. It's just inside there. Whatever you want to do. Now, let's say this. The way you're explaining it, it's sort of like you're saying like, oh, well, it's just a choice that you can make. But that's it's not a choice like a linear amount of choices. It's ordered like a hierarchy or something like that. If you honestly believe that you're going to go to heaven, you're going to do this, and that's fundamentally part of so where it's a self-actualization goal, then it entails everything around it. There's no way you could separate it.
Right, but there's no negative consequence for me not to, or to do those things. It just doesn't. I get it. I don't operate on negative consequences, right? Like I do things because I think that they're good and they'll benefit others. They'll benefit me. Usually, a negative consequence won't or deter me from making an action, right? Because when you make an action, you have a positive consequence and a negative consequence. It's like an equal and opposite reaction. And negative ones don't necessarily make me choose better choices, right? Like I know it's illegal to speed, but I still speed, right?
Sure.
Like the negative of me getting a ticket is not enough for me to not speed.
Yeah. Yes. Again, I'm not a binary. I don't believe in dualisms. I don't believe there's negative or anything like that. There's only for you in human action. There's only self-actualization, and wherever that is inside yours, you're only going to choose what's fundamentally self-actualization. Self-actualization always leads towards the fundamental good, which is God.
And
so
where
I want to play devil, or I should I say God's advocate for a second, because often we atheists like to harp on Christian theology because of the idea that God would damn people for eternity for finite crimes. And here we have a theist with a theology that doesn't do that. So to take a second and appreciate that for a moment and kind of reflect on what that actually means, and to see what like does that kind of solve anything for us as far as our contentions go, Lefty? Like
I've actually read about religions, Christians that don't believe in hell, and they also like believe in this purgatory, or there's no purgatory, just everybody's going to heaven, right? And I've read about it, and when I was going through my deconversion or whatever, it didn't make a lot of sense to me, because it was like, well, what's the point of me being here then if it leaves more questions unanswered than actually just dealing with normal Christians.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's the hard, and that's why I like this discussion, is because I've never spoke to anybody like this, because you only read about it and you're like, wow, that's really odd. I can't believe that this is something that somebody. I'm not saying it's weird, but I just can't see how somebody could hold some of these beliefs and me still not be like, oh, that's a terrible thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Like not in a negative way. Like to be honest, right? Out of all the religions or denominations under Christianity, it seems like yours, while kind of weird, may fit more into the broader scope of things that atheists would, or non-believers or something would want to do, right? Which is to do good things. Now, how we understand what good things are is where we split off. But if we can come to this objective understanding between us of what is good, then we can still coexist and work together and do good things together.
Sure, I don't disagree with that. Yeah, there's other religions that are universalist too. But yeah, it may come off a bit unique, but inside the Bible, I forgot which verse it is inside Matthew, but they specifically say that well, you think it says like everlasting, you're given everlasting life and everlasting punishment. But if you actually look inside the Greek and you look at the early Greeks that were like that, they were all universalists. Origen was universalist. How would you say it? The Augustine was for a little bit at the start, but a lot of them were. And it's mostly the Greek side. It wasn't the Latin side. The Latin side, there was a translation error. But if you look at the word they use ionios. And this is really interesting philosophically because what that would be is eon, so it's the adjective of eon. But eon is used inside Gnosticism. The word for forever, so it uses eon instead of forever, which is idios. And so eon, what that more is, if you look inside the Septuagint, they use ionios, which is the eon, over elam or olam, which means world. And so what it fundamentally is saying, like, and Plato uses this in the same way, like you're going to find philosophers use the same word in the same way. And what it means is that there's levels of it. So you're in stages of it. And if you're in the eon of God, then that means it's forever necessarily. But idios is what Aristotle uses for forever, and it's the traditional one that you have inside there. So you'll find inside the Greek world, there's a lot of universalism that's there. So, but yeah, ever since the Latin, the Eastern fell, and then the Latin Church went a little bit higher, there was a lot of translation errors that happened there. And so even still, yeah, if you look at the Greek inside there, you'll find a lot of it says, exactly as that, universalism. If you could look at the verses even without it, like if you look at First Timothy 4:10, it says like I forgot what the verse exactly is, but it says basically that God wants everybody and is going to save everybody. And then they have one in Romans as well, where it's like he allowed everybody to where everybody fell in sin, Jesus Christ saved everybody. So you'll find a lot of universalist conceptions inside the Bible. So yeah, it may sound weird, I suppose, but I'm not sure exactly.
It's just not the norm or the more broad interpretation, because a lot of Christians believe in hell, but technically I don't think the hell's mentioned in the Bible. A lot of Christians have different ideas on seed faith gospel, on like material wealth and how God is a vending machine if you praise him and stuff like that, even though like that's just a total misunderstanding of those verses. Or from my research into the one verse about homosexuality, that the word that they use to describe gays actually isn't agreed upon in translation and means many different things. It either means that you can't have sex with children, you can't have sex with animals, or it only condemns like man on man gay sex, not female on female.
Well, it translates as the soft ones, or the effeminate. So it's not to be effeminate, and then people who are lay in bed with effeminate people, but or soft ones. It says soft ones. So the question is what soft ones mean.
What is a soft one? Is it a child?
Yeah.
Child sex was, men having sex with children was very prevalent in those times.
Yeah.
And it's one of those
With
words it's one of those words that this whole denomination of Christianity that has the most influence in the South believes. And that's actually a good question. Is like, aside from all of this, what makes you think that your denomination of Christianity is the one true one?
Well, it's the same as physics or math, like you're going to find people and they come up like, oh, arithmetic's cool, and they're like, no, geometry is better. And then you have that thing with Plato versus Parmenides or Pythagoras. You're going to have these people who argue about which one's better, but you're going to find out that some of them are a little bit more fundamental to them, and some of them just have more explanation towards them. And so in that same sense, we're all in a relationship with God and in Christianity, but I would extend this to everybody. And we're all trying to fundamentally find what is fundamentally more universally true, and that's all we do.
But that all of these Christian denominations share the word of God through the Bible, right? Like this is where you get most of your knowledge from, is it not?
Yeah, but keep in mind we have children Bibles just as well. So I mean,
Right.
it's like your understanding is going to grow as your relationship with God.
But there are also many different translations of that Bible. So like, how do you know that your translation is the best translation or the most true?
It's more true. We're not gonna. There's no best translation because humans. Epistemic certainty. That's the word I meant. I was trying to think of. We don't have epistemic certainty. We're in original sin. We don't. We are not God. We are separated from God, and we can never know things on the level of God. We can just reconcile ourselves to God. So in that sense, we're not. If there are people out there who are like, oh, the King James version was, buried by Pastor Jim, in like 300, AD, whichever. If you have people going about that, that's like, okay, that's where they are in their relationship with God, or where their understanding of things. So I don't condemn people for wherever they're at in anything, even atheists or anything. I love everybody, and I think everybody should. I should help people, and I don't think necessarily reconciling people to God in Christian sense is the path that should be had, and not even necessarily a religious one. I should help people out all the time, and that just helps everyone.
Because by you helping and them going and doing good things, they're already on the path to God.
Yeah. People. Let me put it this way. I've debated Nazis, and I've debated communists. But Nazis particularly, I try to help them out with their arguments because they'll come up with some argument and it'll be like, well, that doesn't really work there, And so it's like, okay, well, here maybe this is a stronger argument, and so I'll try and give like some stronger arguments. And why do I do that? The same reason Plato has his Socratic rhetoric. It doesn't matter because there's fundamentally objective truth, and so as long as you keep trying to help everybody out, fundamentally, to help them self-actualize. If you try and do that, then fundamentally you're going to help. That's going to all lead towards God.
But even if your actions lead to fundamental, terrible atrocities.
Well, I'm not perfect, so I can't even pretend that what me trying to help somebody is going to actually help somebody. But that is my goal, and that's what I try to do. If you got rid of the contradictions inside Nazism, you would get rid of the racism. You would get rid of the nonsense that's inside there. And then that would obviously help Hitler, not do terrible things, because it's contradicting. You're not helping yourself. You're stabbing yourself.
Were you always a Universalist?
I was raised Trinitarian.
Okay.
A regular Trinitarian with regular conceptions of soteriology.
So, guys, I'd like to go through all these chats when you guys are done with this line of talking. When you get a chance.
Yeah, go ahead. When you switched to your Universalism, did it happen before, during, or after the military?
Oh, after. I was atheist. I was atheist from 19 to like 25, but then I became like a full anti-theist, and then eventually, like, I just couldn't understand what was happening. Like I liked Atheist Rue and like people like that. Like I watched them a lot. But like then there was a movement with Dave Rubin and Jordan Peterson, they said cultural Christianity effectively, or that's the message we got. And I was like, that makes sense. I was like, that makes sense, because I kept finding myself in political arguments where I was arguing against the atheist and with a Christian. Like that started getting me to question like morality, like what's happening with us. And so then I was like, well, there's got to be something good inside there. And then I got more into philosophy. And you go on YouTube, a lot of the philosophers that who do history of philosophy or something like that, you'll find a lot of them are Christian. And so I kept being like, okay, I get this. And then once I got onto Plato's concepts a bit more, about objective truth, objective morality, I started looking at the Bible, and I was like, well, I do know some of this stuff, so I started using it as a yardstick, and eventually once I came upon enough proof, I would say the ontological argument it's perfect for me, particularly Gödel's conception. It's changed everything about how I view things. It's how I try and understand math. It's how I try and understand everything. So, and that entails universalism. Yeah.
And then the last question about your military. And I don't care if you've seen combat, but did you see combat?
No, I didn't know.
Okay. These are interesting questions that I keep in the back of my head when I talk to a lot of veterans in their path, either towards or away from theology, is to understand like what pivotal events may have happened to trigger a different mindset or a new lens for them to see the world through or whatnot. But that was it.
Sure.
How about
no
you?
judgment.
Did you see combat?
I did. I was deployed to Iraq, and a lot of my philosophical journeys started there, but wasn't really until I left the military. So,
Yeah, exactly the same thing for me. What part of Iraq? What year? 07, 08, maybe?
I was there from 07 to 08 on Camp Liberty.
Camp Liberty, man, dude. We could have fucking. I was trying not to cuss. We could have walked past each other at some point.
Probably because my unit was stationed at what was the larger base there with the Z or the big hill with all the satellites on it. Liberty, is it Camp Liberty?
I can't remember. It was so long ago.
But I never left Camp Cropper because I was a medic inside the detainee facility, and it was an incredibly secure place. So to get on and off was a pain in the ass, and I just realized that it's just better for me to live my life in solitude.
Well, that's crazy, man. That's wild. So let me go ahead and read up some of these not super chats, but chats that that our audience has graciously sent our way.
I know I see purple.
Purple
Hi,
rhymes
purple.
with orange. Hey, purple. I'm so sorry. Assuming purple rhymes with orange. They say evil is highly subjective. Most people don't consider a lion evil. If we were a herd of zebra and a lion was deciding which of our children will be its next, a lion would be an evil creature. Be its next meal.
Yep. I've had that conversation with her before.
Most people don't consider a lion evil, but if we were a herd of zebra and a lion was deciding which of our children would be its next, a lion would be an evil creature, be its next meal. That probably just came out of order or something. But yeah,
that's fair.
what you're saying.
It's the concept that like animals can't be evil because they're just based off instinct, and to apply the concept of morality to them doesn't actually work. Like when a lion takes over a pride and commits infanticide on the cubs, is that evil? Well, no, it's not evil because he's just ensuring that his babies will then have the higher chance of survival.
I agree. I don't agree with evil. So I think he's trying to self-actualize. I think he's making a mistake, certainly, but I don't think that's the best decision that he can make. But I do feel like he's trying to self-actualize. Yeah.
And sometimes I hate that argument because it kind of kind of falls into the appeal to nature argument. You know, if it's in nature, then it's right or whatever, or if it's
More,
natural, then it's definitely good.
yeah, more
Okay.
naturalistic fallacy.
So this other person may or may not be Otangelo. And apparently Otangelo has been up to some fuckery, for lack of a better term. And we don't have a lot of theists in the chat, so I'm just going to read their messages. And we'll just treat them as if they were from anybody else. But Otangelo, if you are there and you're in the audience, I admonish you for that, assuming that is true. If it's not true, then let me know, and we'll address that, I suppose. But you know, we all make mistakes, and we've all done bad things, including me. So if you are sorry for that, then that's a different story, I suppose. But you know, don't dox people. It's not good. They say if morality is subjective, it equals no morality at all. Does anybody agree with that?
I think it equals subjective morality analytically. So I don't feel like I feel like it's too particular. I don't feel like that's a good enough. I don't. Yeah, just that subjective morality. It's too. There's of the things that it does govern is very small. Just cogito.
Okay. Native atheist. Enter the Euthyphro dilemma. Are you familiar with that, Shwah?
Yeah,
Euthyphro dilemma?
by Plato. It's the
I'm
first
not very
dialogue.
versed on Plato.
It's
Yeah.
whether you would whether if God wills something, does that make it good, or is it good because
God wills it.
yeah.
See, I mostly
If
know
God,
Plato through his political works, like The Republic. That's a book I spent a lot of time on. But when it comes to the other things about morality and stuff, I didn't read him for that.
yeah, it's the first one. It's pretty interesting. It's just Socrates. He's walking around and he's he's supposed to get charged, and then Euthyphro comes up and he's his friend. And he's like, they have a discussion, and it's Plato's earlier dialogue. So Plato's trying to just show the Socratic dialogue and sort of be like, this is what Plato is. And so you'll find that it's very simple. In the Protagoras, you'll see him actually lose the debate. And so will Protagoras, in the sense that they switch sides. Now, with Aristotle's rhetoric, that's bad because truth comes from you. It's subjective, And in a sense, you have to win. It's you have to make it look like your point wins, whether you're right or wrong. That's where the thing goes for Aristotle's rhetoric. And Cicero took that up, and that's generally how we conceptualize debates and rhetoric and stuff like that. But Plato, he said, or Socrates, he said, well, it doesn't matter if I switch sides because I learn more about it, and I can question people about things because objective truth will sort things out. So you need objective truth in order to have Socratic dialogue. So in that same sense, that's what he's doing right there. But he does come up with that question for Euthyphro. It's if something is something good because God wills it, or if it's good, does that mean or that God will it or something? I don't remember exactly.
I'm really not sure exactly how you answered to that.
Yeah, I think everything's fundamentally from God. So it's
Right.
and it's I suppose you'd say the former. It was if it's I don't believe in good, but everything emanates from God. But you can say that it's good because God wills it.
Now I sense that if I push, that we're going to end up in a spiral. So I'm going to let it go.
Sure,
Okay.
hopefully not, but yeah.
And our chatter, our theistic chatter, Angelo ostensibly says, if moral values are not enforced from above, they are meaningless.
They have
That's
less meaning.
kind of the point that I hate to say meaningless because it makes me sound like a nihilist or whatever, but It was a like a side point I was trying to make. If there's no consequence, there's no point in there being a choice or whatever. Like, what is the point of going through the actions?
Yeah. Well, I agree. I think it has less meaning. I wouldn't say as it's meaningless, just like you. But again, I don't believe choice or free will is there. It's just being. It's just predicational monism. We all
Unless
just
there's a concept I've been working on, and it's the one universal thing that I think almost anything strives towards, and it's the drive for knowledge is the only
yeah.
force that doesn't have an end. So therefore it's infinite. And if you continuously if that is what is objectively good or whatever, then there's no end. And it's something I've been thinking about.
I see where you're going with that. I'm not going with it, but I see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
Actually, and I along similar lines of logic, I have come to the conclusion that the thing is actually perpetual survival. So it's interesting that you came to knowledge. I came to perpetual survival. I think T Jump came to what is it? His moral system is all based on no encumbrances of free choice. So
Okay.
it's a little,
That's the discussion. That's the discussion. You should have brought that up. That's
But
the foundations that we could have used.
But that also, like, when it comes to survival, I did think about survival, but there is an end point to survival, right? Like, we are finite beings. So at some point, we can't live for eternity, at least not yet. And we don't know what eternity is, really, to be honest.
sure.
And I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, maybe it is survival. Because I was trying to think of, like, what is the thing that would drive evolution, right? That is like a universal truth that drives evolution. And surviving seems to be that. But more fundamentally, it's just knowledge, because there's no end point to how much knowledge one can gain.
And it's just beneficial, right? For anybody to have more knowledge about anything. So
when you say that survival has an end point, right?
Like there's an end goal.
Survival doesn't really have an end goal. It is a perpetual pursuit. It never really stops. It is a thing that you're doing right now and that you'll never stop doing until you fail at it. Once you failed at survival, you're no longer surviving, you're dead. Knowledge is a part of that, I would say. It's something that you require in order to achieve this perpetual struggle for survival. If you remain ignorant, then eventually a meteor is going to crash into you, or a virus or whatever is going to take you out. So without knowledge, you can't survive anyways. But I would say that even though perpetual survival may not be actually obtainable, you or even us don't necessarily need to know that or even care about that in order to continue to struggle for it. And the fact that, or maybe not even the fact, but the possibility that the universe itself has an expiration date isn't necessarily exclusive of this idea, because we still have to struggle for it anyways.
No, you're right. Actually, my counter was, it's actually that if we want something to be like universal, it has to be true in all circumstances. And because suicide exists, it can't be universal.
So
and not suicide because you feel bad because your mom beat you, but like people who honestly feel that they're trapped in a burning house and the only way to get out of that burning house is to end your life.
Right.
Like
No,
honest suicide, right?
Sure.
So it has to. What do you think drives that action?
I have no idea. But because they don't want to survive anymore, and they probably have a good reason that I could probably be like, yeah, dude, actually, maybe so. It's hard for me to find that as a universal thing versus like just the pursuit of knowledge.
So when it comes to suicide, the way I conceptualize goodness itself, it's a thing that can only exist between agents. And the way I prove that to myself is that in a hypothetical world where there's only one individual, there can be no such thing as good or bad to me. It seems to me like if you were the only being in that world, there's literally no such thing as a bad thing you could do. You could, bang your head against the wall. Who cares? I mean, it's just, there's nothing you can do. You can't hurt anybody else except for you, and you are giving yourself permission and consenting to it. So who cares?
But if you're, let me see, if your end goal, or if your goal in life is to survive, then anything that would counter your ability to survive would be bad. This it's called it's in game theory. It's a mathematical concept. It's called rational self-interest, and it's the concept
you have the goal of survival than anything.
Yeah,
that goes
we would never choose anything that would give us the sucker's pill, the worst possible payout, right? Because it wouldn't make sense for us to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to throw my life away. And that was one of my big counters to that argument. Even if you're by yourself, you can still have a system of good and bad, because if your point was to survive, anything that would deter you from surviving would be bad.
Sure. So, but in that situation, that's like a Kantian hypothetical imperative, where it's just you making up that imperative for yourself. That's your own personal goal, right? But I'm trying to think of a universal objective morality, right? Something that's more applicable to everyone. And so the contrast of the hypothetical world with only one individual is only to illustrate that difference, right? You can have hypothetical imperatives in that world, and that's fine, but there's no objective there. There's only subjectivity in that universe. There can be nobody else to have that objective goal with anybody else. You can't say, okay, you and me, let's get together and make this and that and whatever.
But I mean, you could have an objective goal just by yourself. If it's just survivability, that would be the objective. Nobody would be there to argue against it, so it's just true on its own, right?
Yeah, it would be a personal objective that is valued subjectively.
Right, but then subjective and objective wouldn't really matter because there's nobody else to. I get what you're saying, but the concepts wouldn't be in play anymore. Kind of like how there would be no sense for having morality if there's no consequence. I'm just playing with you, Shwah.
But the value of objectivity is the multi-person perspective angle of it, right?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
Like I'm holding this lighter, right? And the only value of me saying it is a lighter is that you can look at it and say, yeah, it's a lighter too, right?
Yeah.
If I call it something else and I say objectively, I've decided I have the objective of renaming the lighter a dingle hopper, and you're not going to ever agree to call it a dingle hopper, then it's totally worthless, right?
Yeah. But if you were to call it a dingle hopper and there was nobody to challenge you, there would be no sense in saying objective or subjective.
Right. The words two lose all meaning at that point. So, I mean, the single world hype illustration, I think still, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it still shows the absurdity of morality in that universe. Do I
would say that, how would you say it? Like for the lighter example, if you pointed at it and you said it's a shish kebab or something like that, you said this is a shish kebab, or you said, can you grab that shish kebab, and you're like pointing towards the lighter or something like that. And and it's on a stump, and you're like, well, clearly you don't want me to have the stump. The understanding of what you're saying and all that stuff, it's all determined. The values of it in every sense is from the lighter itself. So the thing, in a sense, you could say it's relative to the material object, and that's where that subjective, whatever it is, the subjective truth is just trying to understand it from that object or whatever. But clearly, a lighter is, not, extraordinarily universal. Kant obviously uses the categorical imperatives to be very universal. So there's, again, I would say there's orders of universality.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of threw me. So I kind of want to just jump back into this chats, but if you guys want to keep going with that, then go ahead.
I had a thought, but it left my head already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say Maya Atkinson had said that Yahweh commanded for all of the people of the land, including infants, to be killed on multiple occasions in the Old Testament. If killing babies is bad, the God of the Bible didn't get the memo.
Sure. Yeah. How would you say? No, not all Christians accept the Bible to be. Some of them accept it to be metaphorical, but there's allegorical, typological, allegorical. In fact, Paul wrote how he wrote it. The theology that Christians accept is typological allegory. Philo or Philo, I don't know how it's pronounced. The Jew, he tried to argue from an allegorical conception, but in this sense. How would you say it? In a typological concept, it's basically like Christ. That we have different covenants. This is dispensationalism, and how we grew or understand it is broader. The more fundamental or the newer covenants that we have. So Christ answers everything. So yeah, we did have to do turn the cheek. How is it? Turn the cheek superseded. What's it called? Talion, where you eye for an eye. But in any case, how would you say how we conceptualize it and how we interpret it also grows as we get closer virtues towards God. And the closest virtue towards God is obviously logos for Christian. So yeah, and, you would have to read it. You would have to read it in the newest covenant.
So you're saying that it did happen, basically.
Oh yeah, I would say that people, their understanding of it, that was their relationship with it. That's how they interpreted what the actions were. But as it is right now, where we are, where our relationship is with God, Christ, the Logos, etc. He's what reconciles us to God, and that's how we interpret everything. But that doesn't deny the insights that they had. Moses, him saying all that he said. It got them out of slavery. I think that's Leviticus 25, 30, 42, I think. But it's like he says that the reason you're out of slavery is because you are slaves of mine. You're abeds of mine. Abeds, that's slave and servant. So it's the concept of it is a bit different from what the modern conception or what the liberal capitalist conception of it is in terms of property and stuff like that. But yeah, so they are virtues, they are fundamental, and they do grow, and they do conceptualize our growing conception with God. That's biblical. That's Adam and Eve. That's everybody. They try and grow with a conception of God, and then they fail, and then eventually Christ comes. So.
Okay. These two go together. Angelo had said that killing babies for fun is always wrong, and then Maya Atkinson had replied that who the fuck kills babies for fun?
Psychopaths, yeah.
Who does that? Only psychopaths.
Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Actually, hurricanes don't have feelings, so.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily say that the God of the Bible was being described as killing them for fun per se, but certainly it was unnecessary and gratuitous.
Yeah. I don't think he killed. I don't think he.
You don't think he killed any babies?
No.
So yeah, I mean that's a whole other debate. Though I don't want to.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
whole
fine.
other debate. So you
Yeah.
don't think that Noah, the whole flood story, is just allegory or something?
Well, I haven't looked into that or understood that, but I would say that how our conception of God is right now is how we interpret that, and I if anything, I suppose what God had a hand in. Well, I don't know. I don't want to get too metaphysical inside it. So I would go into yeah. God didn't kill anybody. Our conception of God has grown, and yeah, just that.
I want to read this one. Okay, native atheists. So one can kill babies, just not for fun. Thanks for clarifying.
Who
Yeah.
said that?
Pretty much.
This is an old chat. Not
Yeah, they're
recent.
all they came in while we were talking, couldn't interrupt, so we're just gonna go through them. Maya Atkinson says, so don't be a psychopathic killer. Yeah, the overwhelming majority of people already understand that. Again, doesn't mean it came from a god. Purple rhymes with orange. Mother trying to get kids to go to sleep, but the kids are freaked out by the thunder and lightning. So she tells them a story about someone controlling the storm to calm them down. After the mother dies, the kids tell their kids the stories, believing them to be fact. We then have a storm god, and no one remembers that it all started as a story to calm scared children. And this was a response to a question about how stories about gods get started in the first place.
Yeah,
So
theory of religion.
how do you how do religions get started?
Yeah. Well, there's naturalist conceptions of God are like or theories of religion are sort of self-defeating. They're like, oh, well, they're just trying to explain a natural pattern. It's like, so they invented, metaphysical, invisible, like all these abstract things, made religions, and couldn't tell that their, priests were lying and stuff like that. Like it's sort of self-defeating. So why are they doing all this if they're trying to explain nature? So a common theory of religion is that people started out as animists. Well, they had burial cults, and you see animals have burial cults sometimes too, like elephants and stuff like that. And that's started from grief and love and stuff like that. But then after that, it evolves into like animists, and then by late stage hunter-gatherer, you get totem animal worship, and that's where you like fear worship like spiders or bears or something like that. And eventually that evolves into paganism, and you'll see the crossover with a lot of these, with burial cults and then animal gods and stuff like that. And then that develops into monolatry, which is where you have one god fundamentally, but you accept others, and then that evolves into pure monotheism. And you see this happen, throughout, human history and lots of other places. So again, how I would explain that is just you're growing in your conception and relationship with God.
Okay. These objective moral truths are not grounded in the way the world is, but rather in the way the world ought to be. The world itself, the way it is, the laws of physics or physical beings cannot account for the way the world ought to be. The way to account for morality is that God established morality.
Do you buy into the Hume and Izzat gap, or do you have a opinion on it?
I think that the Izzat gap is not easily reconciled. The thing that I think reconciles the Izzat gap is the perpetual survival thing that we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
Because it's the only thing that does it.
I think that's a fair one. I think it does fall into some of the holes that Lefty brought up. I feel like knowledge just as well. That's a really good one, but it does fall into the issue of it doesn't explain what it is that we're trying to have knowledge of. It just explains epistemology, not the ontology that we try and strive for. And then, obviously the most fundamental being for me is God. But yeah, but I do agree that Izzat seems like that it does seem to have some explanatory power. But if you look up the definition of belief, and if you just think about it for a second, it's propositional in the sense that we accept it as true personally. And so if you think of if you could set up a few like syllogisms and stuff like that where you're like good is like self-actualizing. If you steal from somebody, you're taking away from them to be able to self-actualize. Ought means what somebody should always do. You can have these series of whatever and eventually have completely in his terms man shouldn't or ought not steal. And I feel like that's just trivially what we do anyways. So I feel like the human and ought gap is it's deprecated.
So how do I want to what do you think, Lefty?
I have no idea. The is-ought problem is one of those things where I don't know. I just haven't paid much attention to. It's not something that I found interesting or worth debating in my mind.
Okay. Well, let's just move on for now. Maya Atkinson wants to know, Shwah, if you think that God created math.
Yeah.
You do? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
there you go. Purple Rhymes with Orange says, but in the Bible, God commands his people to bash babies against the rocks. So how can God be good if killing babies is bad?
I'd have to look at the verses because I look at all these times I find these verses and I'd like to learn like Greek before I go into it again. So, but I grew up with it. But I do find all these verses that people say, and it's particular that people bring up as criticism and atheist criticisms generally, and I look at them and every single one I have to find the verse and then I have to look and I look down a little bit more and it's like it answers it like the next verse or a few verses after. Examples in Exodus where they say like, oh, if you beat your slaves, then you don't get in trouble unless you beat your slaves and they die, then you can get in trouble. And they're like, see, look, it's so bad. And then I'm like, literally go down just a few verses and read a little bit. And it says, talion applies towards slaves. If you eye for eye, tooth for tooth, wound for wound, eventually it goes through the whole thing. That's what talion is. And it says like, but if you do that towards, an abed, which would be a slave or servant, if you do that towards them, then they get freedom. And so if you take an eye from them, they get freedom. If you take a tooth from them, then they get freedom. So it applies talion towards them. And then if, again, like the reason for this is so they don't get enslaved. That's the whole thing. That's what this whole covenant is founded upon. And so I'd have to look into what the verse is.
I'm sorry. So this is a matter of fact, and I want to just resolve it. I'm sorry. Lefty, are you cool with that? I'm just going to go ahead and...
Hey, man, it's your channel. I'm learning, too. A lot of these verses I've read a couple times, and I'll look it up, and I'm like,
Okay. So this is from Psalms 137. It's verse 9, but let's just go back a little bit, right? Let's go to verse 4. How can we sing the song of the Lord while in a foreign land? If I forget you, Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth. If I do not remember you, if I do not consider Jerusalem my highest joy. Remember, my Lord, what the Edomites did on the day Jerusalem fell. Tear it down, they cried. Tear it down to its foundations. Daughter Babylon, doomed to destruction. Happy is the one who repays you according to what you have done to us. Happy is the one who seized your infants and dashes them against the rocks. That's it.
Sure.
The whole chapter.
Yeah.
The end of it.
Yeah, well, that's fine. But how would you say it? Psalms isn't the covenant itself. It's not what things are based on, the covenant. It's just wisdom sayings from them. So yeah, in any case, Christianity does very clearly is against bashing babies' heads into rocks. So just on the surface, you can see that there's a different metric that interprets these.
So we can kind of just throw away the whole book of Psalms then, pretty much.
No, it's you understand it as their relationship with God. What that is supposed to say is it's supposed to be Jerusalem, Israel. It's supposed to indicate their God's relationship or their covenant with God for that. So you don't take it. You don't throw. It's not. Go ahead. It's not dualism.
Right, but we can't
you
learn
don't-
anything about. We can't learn anything about God's will. We can't learn anything about God's law. We can't learn anything about what God actually says or does. All we can learn about is what people in that time felt and thought about God from Psalms, is what you're saying, right? These are all just
No.
stories, poetry, right? So we don't need it. We can just kind of push it to the side.
It's a different covenant. So you have a different covenant. So just as I said, the Mosaic covenant is based off being slaves towards God. So they're not slaves towards other people. That covenant it's strong. It's strong, and to a large degree, it's very moral compared to the ethical systems that were there. So it does have a lot of explanatory power. It does have a lot of good universality of being. But you should read the Bible more as a deepening and of a relationship with God and the outputs that happen for that. What happened with the Israelites? Like they survived, put out good works. They did a lot of really good things. And I wouldn't take this away from any other religion either. But you can see that they're trailblazers in a large sense or in a lot of senses for things. So yeah, it's just a growing relationship with God, and where they were at that, they clearly weren't Christian, and they clearly weren't at a covenant past that. So we can respect where they were at, but understand that that's not fundamentally God. That's not fundamentally how we interpret truth or goodness or charity or love, etc. They're good for that time too.
I'm sorry. What was the last part?
They're good for that time too. They're good for that time too. If you're going around through now, I will say this. How would you say it? Turn the other cheek. Like that's MLK used it. Gandhi got it from Tolstoy, or he was influenced by Tolstoy. Turn the other cheek is just way more powerful. It's just so much more powerful. It just does so much more that that a war can't do. So if you see these things as like, wow, you're not slaves anymore. You've got everything figured out. Like before that was the Noahide, or was the Abrahamic covenant. But before that was the Noahide covenant, which is Noah, and that taught people how to operate with animals, how to interact. That's where some of the Ten Commandments came from, how to treat things, and that really pulled people ahead. So you have to see these really as what the virtues are, and then see everything else as well. People are trying to grasp and interact with it, and as they try and deepen their relationship with it.
All right. Well, I want to try to wrap this up in the next few minutes. I was going to highlight some of the ones here that I started a whole bunch of these chats that people sent because they were good. Some of them were funny. Maya Atkinson said, the universe doesn't operate on math. We use math to understand the universe. And this is, of course, in reference to something we were talking about earlier, but I thought that was important to highlight there because, of course, I agree with it. And, I wanted to see if you had something compelling to disagree with that.
I don't think math is God, no. But I don't think it's something I think it's something we use to the field is something we use to understand the universe, but what we're trying to, the correspondence, what we're trying to understand, if you want to call that ontological math or something like that, I do think that has a lot of explanatory power for how the universe works, but it's not God fundamentally. And, the logicist program assumes that you can use logic to understand math. So, in any case, you have to have some standards in which case to say math is wrong, a math problem is wrong or something. So.
I'm just a little confused about that last part there. We have some kind of standard to say that a math problem is wrong.
Yeah. Right? So if you say like 1 + 1 = 3, it's just like, well, it's math and it's the most fundamental thing. So you can't say it's wrong, but it's just like, well, what makes that wrong? What makes it correct? How correct is it? How wrong is it? What does it correlate to? So it clearly can't be.
I'm conflicted because I do want to wrap it up, but I do want to push on everything. So
that's fine.
Let's just push on. Purple Rhymes Orange also wanted to comment on that also and say that math is the language we develop to discuss what we observe about the universe, to bolster that point. So math is not. You do agree with that, okay?
Yeah.
Maya had also said that God is a story that you are told that you are too old to still believe in.
That's well, I guess let me give since it's being peppy, I'll be peppy back. But Gödel, the person who is, the incompleteness theorem, he's a very smart logician and stuff like that. He wrote an ontological problem, which is considered valid even by Oppie. And anybody else who studies, like modal logic, it's valid. It's the question is the axioms and stuff like that. So if I'm too old for that, then I guess I don't know. That's a compliment in hell. That's a compliment of hell. That's a really good compliment.
Okay. Godless Granny was here. I'm not sure if she's still in the chat, but she had said that I disagree with Lefty that there is a point to morality without God. Do you remember that moment when you said something like that, Lefty?
Yeah, but I was playing. I was trying to steel man his position.
Okay.
Right. Like of course, I believe that there is a point to morality without God. I believe that there's a discussion to be had about morality, even though I don't believe in God. I was just saying in his view, I don't remember, I guess. Yeah. But no,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Native Atheist had said that there's only one alternative to heaven according to your book, which is not. And Angelo had also said a few times that purgatory is not biblical. Do you have some kind of scripture that substantiates the idea of purgatory?
Yeah, I'd have to look for it though, but yeah, I believe it's in Matthew. It says, you build your house, you have a foundation, and then you build on top of it. And if you use wood or something and you burn it down. And it's talking about salvation. So, but I'd have to get the exact. It says so. Build it with good materials, and you'll. I'd have to get the exact verse. I don't want to misquote it, but it's the typical one they use for purgatory.
So this is a interpretational inference.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't literally say purgatory, no, but but the concept is, we're supposed to more fundamentally understand it.
But his denomination isn't the only one that believes in purgatory, so.
Yeah.
So Titan Uranus, I love that name, said something in the chat just now. And what makes 1 + 1 3? What makes 1 + 1 = 3 wrong is that it's an untrue statement. It doesn't properly describe any known phenomena or process. I'm jumping ahead to that because I don't want to miss it, and we're we're so high up on the list. But like, my hands, right? This little camera. I call this 1, and I call this 2, and I call that 3, right? And 1 + 1 = 2. I call these numbers what they are. But if I were to start calling this 3, that's just wrong because we don't call it 3. We could all agree that this is 3 fingers, and then all of a sudden that would be a mathematically correct statement. But that's only because this is not 3. This is 2.
Yeah. Semiotically. Yeah, you can call it which is, or semantically even, you can call it or write however you want it to. But what it's fundamentally corresponding.
But this is the basis of all math. These things that we are counting and quantifying all around us, that's the basis of all math. These things around us.
It's the basis of human conception of math. But yeah, it's for how atoms operated before. They use different conceptions.
Isn't this what Kant talks about in Critique of Pure Reason when he's like 1 + 1 = 2 only because it's based upon like a priori knowledge that you wouldn't like in nature. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 because there's no knowledge that lets you know that 1 + 1 = this thing.
He actually says a priori synthetic. It's a priori synthetic. So he does think that you do need to use your consciousness to grab something inside the world. The basis of analytic philosophy denies that. Frege, he went through great pains to show that it's not a priori synthetic, it's a priori analytic. But I do agree with what your position is, though, that it's inherent, it's analytic. Like bachelors are unmarried men, like that's it's just inherent inside there. Like 1 + 1 = 2. Like you can do laws and stuff like that, and it's just true by definition. But yeah, no, yeah, I agree with all that.
Okay. Guitar Dog, first one that we got from them today, says that Matthew is also the only place that mentions zombies walking around Jerusalem and seen by many.
I'd have to look. I really would. I've made a point that especially since I found out about a few things, I'm not gonna. I just if somebody points out the verse, I'll look for it and try and see what it is. But I know the covenants already, so I just use that to interpret it. But yeah, I'd have to see it.
All right.
Before that, I'm not gonna.
There were all right. So I think that would be enough for reading all the. Let me see. Most bigots use the Bible to justify their hate of minorities. From Purple Runs Orange.
Can I address that, please?
Can
I address the can I address the minorities? Yeah. So if you a lot of people like it's pretty offensive, but I don't mind a conversation about it. But whenever people are like, oh, the Bible's used for pro-slavery and stuff like that, it's like nothing in Christ literally says that. And then every verse that they bring up says like, oh well, they said, well, go back, go be a good person, go do a good person. And I can bring up the verse, what specifically it says, but it's we are Christians fundamentally. That's how we are. We do the good thing in any position that we're in. The people who were slave owners, they made abridged slave Bibles, and you could Google it. It's like on Smithsonian, and like they only had like partial books inside there because why? Because the messages inside there were, Israelites were enslaved, try to not be enslaved, all these rules, morals, how you try to not be enslaved, how do you do all these sort of things, these virtues and values. It's a whole freaking step so you can get towards that. And in that same sense, so they tore out a lot of that, and that's the only way they would allow them to teach the slaves, Christianity. I don't know exactly how widespread or whatever that is, but the Smithsonian has it. But yeah, so fundamentally as Christians, we're not single issues. Yeah, sure. And just to be very clear, the first people inside America who were abolitionists, they were Quakers, they're Christians in general, and this is inside the North just as well. In the North, they would riot and be like, you're trying to lead towards the, mongrelization. You're trying to, go away from secularism. And there would be violent riots too. And again, this is inside the North just as well. But this is a Christian concept, and these are Christian ideas that come from it. And whether, people let political things get inside there, you can see very clearly inside the Bible what Christ is, and you can see what that fundamentally is. And that's if we follow that more, then we have a good moral compass. And again, the Jehovah's Witnesses, they were persecuted by the Nazis. And, we have this moral compass. We're always on the right side of history. We've always got something there. And that's something we cherish and we value. And that's why we try and grow more inside Christ, because, liberalism, capitalism, sometimes they'll get caught up in where their virtues are. We have something that's more universal. And that's about your Christianity.
Purple Rums Orange said that the different areas of math don't claim the others are wrong. Guitar Dog says physics requires all the maths. Purple Rums Orange says if God were all powerful and wanted everyone to know that his word, he could have created a book that anyone could read regardless of what their native language was. And Ox says the Bible is not fact. It's wrote by biased old drunk men trying to control and brainwash weak-minded people. Best damn scam to ever be invented. Titan Uranus says, so fascism is okay except for racism. Purple Rhymes with Orange says most bigots use the Bible to justify their hate. I read that one. Okay. And then a whole bunch more live chats came in. And I really appreciate everybody being here and watching, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up at this time. So, really quick, Lefty, why don't you go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you and what they're going to see when they do.
Yep, I have a channel, Lefty Philosophy on YouTube. I do a lot of political stuff. I also make some long form videos in which I basically write a lot of college papers, and they're kind of boring, but there are things that need to be said. My last video was about COVID and the things that we learned and the mistakes that we kept repeating and stuff like that, and why we will probably not get the next pandemic right either. Has a lot to do with language and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm active on Twitter too. So if you want to talk to me, I'll talk to you there.
Okay. Oh, by the way, Matthew 27:52 through 53 from Titan Uranus.
I'll look at
if
it.
you want to know
Okay,
about
I'll look at it. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. And Shwah, thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation with us. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you felt like it wasn't unfair, both of us ganging up on you like this. But I did try to find another theist. You would be surprised how difficult it is to get theists to have conversations like this. But I do appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. Appreciate it. All right.
So, all right. Well, you guys have a great night. Thank you guys, everybody in the chat who joined us, and anybody who watches us later. Keep seeking truth from facts, and y'all have a great night. Bye-bye now.